Hi, Algebra 1, and thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be looking at Lesson 6.2. We're going to look at Part 1 or Day 1 today, and we're specifically talking about nth roots. That's going to make more sense once we write down the first thing that will go in our notes. We're going to be looking for 7 things today to go in our notes. Let's go ahead and get started with number 1. First thing we're going to do, there's a lot of information here, and I color-coded it for you so that you would know what goes with what, but it's all very important that you write down exactly how it is. So it says real nth roots of a. Let n be an integer greater than 1 and let a be a real number. So if n is odd, then a has one real nth root. So that would look like you could either interchange it to the square root of n, or n square root a is equal to a to the 1 over n. If n is even and a is greater than 0, then you actually have two real nth roots. You can do a positive or negative answer, but very similar to the one in yellow previous. If n is even and a is equal to 0, then the only real root it has is n square root of 0 is equal to 0. If n is even but a is less than 0, then a has no real root. See what it's just saying, not a real number here. And this will make more sense once you see some examples being done. But for right now, let's go ahead and pause here, and I need you to write down what you see color-coded. That's going to be kind of like your go-to that you're going to go back to in your notes as you're trying these questions in your notes today and when you're trying homework questions. All right, so what we're going to do first is it says find the indicated real nth roots of a. So like we did before in this chart back here, I'm just going to be referring to this chart. In this first one, n is equal to 3, so n is odd, which would only constitute that very first section, this yellow. If n is odd, then a has one real nth root. So how I'd write this, remember this would have n in this little corner and then the square root symbol and then a. So that just means the 3 would go in the corner, and then the negative 27 would go here. You could also write it as negative 27 to the 1/3, but this way might be more easier managed to find your answer. So it's basically asking what is the cube root of negative 27, and that is equal to negative 3, because negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 is equal to negative 27. Okay, so this is your answer. You're going to try the same thing for letter B. N is equal to 4 and A is equal to 16. So again, 4 goes in the corner and 16 goes under the square root. You can also write it as 16 to the 1/4 power. Again, this way on the left will probably be easiest to solve. That's basically saying what times what times what times what is equal to 16, and that is going to be equal to 2. But because if you go back to your chart, n is even and a is greater than 0, that means your answers can be plus or minus. So plus or minus 2 would actually be your answer here, because you could do 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 and get 16. And you could also do negative 2's 4 times and get 16 as well. Okay, so that is why we give that positive or a negative option. It's not saying that we would intermix them. It's just saying we could have all positive 2's or all negative 2's. Okay, so this one you're going to try. Again, you can go back to your chart to help you. Let's go ahead and pause the video here so you can find the real indicated nth roots of a. And then once you're done, click play so you can check your work. All right, so how we would set up number 3, you could either write it as the cube root of negative 125, or you could write it as negative 125 to the 1/3 power. Since n is equal to an odd number, we're only going to have one real root. So that's basically asking us what is the cube root of negative 125, and it is negative 5. Some of these you might have memorized and some of them you might not, so that's where you come in, you choose a little bit of trial and error with the calculator. Over here for number 3, we have n is equal to 6 and a is equal to 64. Noticing though, I'm going to go ahead and write this both ways, that since n is even and a is greater than 0, we can have two options as our answer, a positive or a negative. So you did need to make sure that you added those positive and negative signs before you started working those out. This question is asking what number, if multiplied by itself 6 times, would give us 64, and that answer is going to be 2. So my answer for number 3 would be plus or minus 2. Okay. The next part we have is just evaluating again. So we're going to keep looking at these. The first one in letter A, it says the cube root of -8. Again, n, here's your n, and this is your a. N is odd, and a, and so what we would do is just find the cube root of -8, which is -2. Remember, you could also write this as -8 to the 1/3 power. For letter B, same thing here. You're finding the cube root of 8, which is 2. Here's n, here's a. But you have to bring down this negative sign. So your answer for B would actually be -2. Again, you can rewrite this expression as the -8 to the 1/3 power. It's basically saying like the negative is hanging out on the outside, so you would solve what's on the inside first and then bring down your negative. For letter C, this one is written in a different way, and so you would just maybe want to rewrite it. I always like to rewrite them as this. 4 is equal to n and 16 is equal to a. That number is going to give us a 2. Noticing also as well, since n is equal to, n is even and a is greater than or equal to 0, we can also say it's positive or negative. And then the last one we have is letter D. This one is extremely important as if you write it back in the square root form. So that'd be 4, the square root, and -16. I still have n is equal to an even number, but a is less than 0. This is less than 0. So if you go back to your chart, when a is less than 0, there are no real nth roots. So you would say not a real number, because nothing times itself 4 times will give you a negative answer. You're always going to get a positive answer because a negative times a negative will always give you positive, and you're just pairing up all those factors of 2. So the next piece you're going to try on your own. We have numbers 4, 5, and 6 here. So let's go ahead and see what we can do here. I'm going to get you to pause the video so you can try these on your own, and then once you're done, click play to check your work. Alright, so for number 4, we're asking what number times itself 4 times is equal to 81, and that's going to give you the number 3. The same thing is true for number 5. When we have, and I'm sorry, you could also have plus or minus 3 there too. When we have, for number 5, the negative on the outside, that means our answer is going to have a negative with it. And then the cube root, or not the cube root, but what number times itself 4 times will give you 81? That is also again 3. We're just going to keep the negative there. For number 6, we have either, sorry, I need to add these pluses or minuses. For number 6, we have 25 to the 1/2 power. Remember, that also is equivalent to the square root of 25, and that could be equal to 5. Again, you can have a plus or minus because n is even and a is greater than 0. The last one, though, if you write it in your cube root form, 2 square root -25, you cannot have that because a is less than 0, so you would say not a real number. Okay, that is going to conclude our notes for today, so just make sure you have those 7 things written down. Again, go back to that chart to help you with your homework questions, and thanks so much for tuning in.